Okay, the recording has now started, so as I just said, please keep your camera and microphone turned off. If you have any questions, please do so in the chats, and if you disagree, let me know now. Thank you. And that was it. You can take the floor, Enric.
Okay, thank you so much, Liva. Well, I want to start by thanking Liva and Pana, who have organized virtually everything. So I really appreciate your help with that. Thank you so much. So today we're doing another webinar, part of the MedTech series of webinars. And as you know, the idea is that I invite mostly participants in projects within my portfolio, the medical technologies and medical devices portfolio at the EIC, and we try to identify problems that are unsolved or are relevant, and that's the whole idea, to do this very short 1 hour maximum meeting with an expert to try to give you some interesting content. So today the focus is on the sales side, as we were discussing with Thijs. So Thijs is the founder. He will tell us himself, but he's the founder of MedTech Connection. This is a company focused mostly on helping MedTech companies with the sales part of their journey. And we see this as a very big, important issue at the EIC, because most of us come from the science side, and we try to focus a lot on developing this core technology for our products, but then we never really think too much about the sales part. How are we going to get this into the market? How are we going to get the products into the hospitals? And we see that all the time at the EIC. So the proposals that you send us, the business plans that you send us, the sales forecasts are always very ambitious, because we all know that venture capital, and we want to see ambitious forecasts, but then they rarely get realized in practice. And when you go into the investment program, the accelerator program, the investors who co-evaluate with us your business plans, they always think those forecasts are not realistic. So we thought we need to find experts who really have on the field experience to really get those numbers to work. So I'm really grateful that Thijs found some time to be with us today. And I give you the floor, Thijs. Please go ahead. You can introduce yourself, maybe a little bit your company, and we will start with a few slides, a short presentation, and then we'll go into the Q&A session. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Enric. Thank you for the introduction. It's a real pleasure to be part of this webinar, and thank you for your invitation. And a real pleasure to exchange on this and to present from the 25 years of experience I have gained in the field, in the commercialization of MedTech technologies. And so I will start sharing my presentation.
By the way, to the audience, of course, please do remember you can send us questions in the chat, and then I'll take them after the presentation.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is about building winning MedTech business plans. So as Enric said, my name is Thijs. Some insights about me. I am Dutch. I do live in Madrid, though. I'm a husband and father of 3. Besides that, I'm a MedTech engineer and a passionate about that, and a business administrator. Since a few years, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a TNT, which means tennis and travel lover. So that's a little bit about me as an introduction. So where I want to take you through during this webinar. First, I'll give you an introduction into the topic. Then we'll look at real-world hospital activation examples. So giving you insights into what are the dynamics in the activation of a hospital. Then some company insights. So what do we do and where do we service? Then what are the challenges in the execution of a business plan? What should you take into account? And in the end, take-home messages, and then we'll move to the Q&A. I'll be very pleased to answer your questions. So let me start with this. So this is as you can see, a graph of 3 examples of startups what we've been working with. And you see different flows, of course. You see more successful, less successful. Let's say number 1. Number 1 is a startup which has been basically ticking all the boxes. And you see that in the beginning, they had a little bit more flat curve, but in the end, they now really are going into a very nice curve of growth, going towards around 6-8 million mark. But what you can see, that's an important note, don't expect revenues from the start. It will take at least about 9 months to really get started. Okay, so this is an example, which is a very solid example. When you look at number 3, this was a startup which is doing artificial intelligence, and that company was struggling. And so you see that they did some first revenues, but in the end, things didn't go well. Investors were not supportive. It was hard to find funds. And in the end, although they achieved some revenue, it was not enough to say, okay, is there a market? Is there enough growth potential? And so the company decided to stop the activities. And number 2, which is capital equipment. So that has a very slow takeoff, as you can see. And it will take quite a while before you have your first activation going on. But finally, the company has found a way. They're now implementing step by step more hospitals over Europe. And now you see them growing. But the takeoff is very slow. And I think these are 3 very nice examples to say, well, look, your technology might be fantastic, but in the end, you have to also tick the other boxes. And so that's something I want to show you here. So what are the elements to secure success? To make sure that indeed, as Enric explained, that your forecast is in the end as close as possible to your actual. And so in forecasting, yes, be conservative, but be ambitious as well. As Enric said, your investors, that's what the people want to see. So, but build a margin for downside. But don't go, I'm Dutch, you don't go smoking weed and think, wow, this is going to be exploding. No, be conservative, but ambitious. And focus on your key markets in that forecasting. And everything outside could be upside, but don't take it into your forecast. Really focus on those key markets, and through your insights, build your forecast. Then checking the boxes in planning execution is another important one. So of course, look at your product innovation and make sure it's not only about the innovation, which can be great, but make sure and test this in the market that it serves the unmet need of the doctor, that it really serves the unmet need. Build your value story. Nowadays, economics is all. So make sure that you have very clear and that you have mapped out what are the phases of how the hospital can save money and earn back the investment. Your sales structure and business model, choose that right. Geographical focus, I will go into that more later. Pick the right segment. So the dynamic between private versus public, what fits best for you. HCP engagement and KOL support. And of course, your clinical marketing investments. Don't underestimate on that, because this can be a building block once you are starting to engage. Pricing model, be flexible, and your structure, of course, of your management team, advisory board, and investors. So these are a couple of the things where I will go more in depth on and give you now some examples of real-time examples of hospitals where we've been working on. And so you can understand a little bit what have been the barriers or what took the lead time to be so long. All right. So number 1 second. So hospital. So what is it to bring your technology to the patient? That's in the end what we all want. So this hospital, Ospedale San Gerardo, Monza in Italy, it's about capital equipment plus a consumable in the space of breast surgery. The total lead time was 9 months and the value was €45,000 on an annual basis, more or less, the potential of that hospital with regard to this technology. What were the barriers in order to get to those 9 months? It was an online pre-sale, so an interesting case of engaging with the doctors from the home country of the company, starting to engage with him and really organizing everything, even without a local partner. So that really accelerated in basically the sales funnel. However, it was, of course, after the doctor has shown his full support, a complex bureaucratic process, Italy can be complex, of budget approval, etc. And the doctor required, and that was definitely the trigger for him to have, and that's what they agreed, to have an investment of free tryout for 20 surgeries in the beginning. And this in an early stage of a startup, you have to invest in those kind of initiatives, because this will make that you have a doctor who will be fully supportive and be your KOL. And indeed, in this case, the doctor in this hospital became a KOL for the company and very important in the later stage of presenting and supporting from the clinical side. That's the first one. Then we go to another country also and another market. A second. Yeah. Diabetes Centrum Bad Lauterberg in Germany. This is about AI screening. It's about diabetic retinopathy, to screen for that. The lead time was about 7 months, so not too long, relatively okay. The value was about 20,000 euro per year. The dynamics here was, it was pretty long tryout what the doctor requested, because he was not sure on the technology. He wanted to test whether indeed the AI is on par and that it gives him the same result as when he would do the screening. So that was about a 6-week trial, free trial, of course. He had to develop his confidence in AI, and there was a lack of clinical data. The company was in a very early stage. There was hardly any clinical data, so the doctor wanted to make sure that he was right. And then once the doctor has given him his okay, the okay of the CEO went pretty fast. However, the whole contract negotiation, also related to data, of course, took quite a long time. And so that took in total about 10 weeks. So you see here that this was kind of like a private center. So that made that the decision-making in general was fast from doctor to CEO. However, the contract negotiation took quite long. And in the end, it was about 7 months. Okay, another example here. Then we go to the other side, more south, to Porto. This is Instituto Português de Oncologia Porto, which is a purely oncological center. There are 3 of those in Portugal. Very interesting. It's about capital equipment plus a consumable. It's about breast surgery, and the lead time was 18 months. And the value, of course, was high, 80,000 euro. And you can imagine this is a big hospital, so a lot of complexity. The tryout was relatively fast. Within 4 months, we had everything fixed, which is normally a tryout, you can say 2, 3, 4 months, more or less. So that part is very fast. However, the administrative process took about 14 months, where it was about the ups and downs of the head surgeon saying the positioning of the product, the side effect, the technology, you wanted to understand that. So there was a bit of back and forth. Sorry, switching the slide. And then in the end, we tried to aim things at not using a tender. However, in the end, administration did require a tender because of the value involved. And so the tender took, of course, a lot of delay in the process. And finally, to receive the order as well, there was some administrative up and down. It took another 2 months. So just for you guys to understand that that even can take 2 months. It's not like, okay, there's all the boxes checked. Okay, now we get the order. No, that even can take long. So that's another barrier. Then I go to Hospital Universitario Clínic in Barcelona, which is definitely one of the top 5 hospitals of Spain. It's about capital equipment. It's a surgical oncology product, and it's taking 12 months now, and it's still pending for you to understand, right? So we are 12 months in the lead, and it's still pending in the sense of to close the agreement to get the activation going, and the value here is 300,000 euros. So that's a significant investment for the hospital. There are various departments involved because several surgical departments can use this technology. It implies a process flow adoption. So that's, of course, resistance by some healthcare professionals or resistance by the hospital. In the end, it will mean a cost saving, but of course, any process flow adoption might be complicated. The startup in this case is saying, look, I'm not going to bring in my technology for every tryout. I first want to make sure that the hospital knows how to finance the CapEx. So before tryout, which of course is complicated. And in Spain is a country which saying, no, I first want to try and then I'll see how to justify it in the hospital. In this case, we have to turn things around because the company just finds the investment to bring in the device, put it in the hospital too big. They just first want to make sure, and they're right, to make sure that the investments is well spent. And finally, there are some regulatory approvals involved, which cause a little bit of a barrier. So very specific, not CE. So in that case, it also causes a delay. I'm convinced we will close this deal quite soon this year. But of course, it's a long lead time when it concerns capital equipment. Okay, those were 4 examples. I hope those were useful for you. This is a bit of a summary of what are those key barriers within all these examples. First one, regulatory and reimbursement, super important. Many times you are faced with either indeed reimbursement or, of course, any regulatory approval. So that's something you really have to investigate from the start and secure this through a window of opportunity scan on a country level to make sure that you understand this landscape and you understand what could be the gaps for you to make sure you get the reimbursement done. Tryouts, lead time and investment. Tryouts are absolutely fundamental within your sales funnel, and it's a make or break. If it works well, it moves on, but it can take a lot of time. So in terms of either investment, especially when it concerns capital equipment, but also in lead time to go up and down with the doctor. When do we do it? The planning is complicated. And so what you need is really proper sales tactics. You need to make sure that your sales rep or the person you have in the market is in there, and you need to dare to invest. So don't dare to invest in the beginning of free products, free tryouts. You will get this back for sure. Then technology and clinical buy-in. As I said earlier, technology is one, but you need to make sure that the doctor sees enough added value in your technology to move the needle for you in the hospital. So that's something which is super important. And if needed, take him to another step. Take him again through it to make sure that he fully understands where the value for him is. The last point, justify the proposal. So you might think, okay, I've done the tryout, the doctor thinks it's great. Now let's move to the next step. Yes, but that's a difficult one because now you need to justify that your technology saves money, improves lives of patients, etc., and especially on the economic side. So one thing which I've seen startups fail is that they wait too long in building their value story. So you need to make things from the beginning. Where does my technology, where is it cost effective? How can it save money for the hospital? What is the benefit for a hospital patient and the doctor, of course? So build this in the early stage. So to give you some insight in actually, this was a kind of the introduction to it all. Now I want to let you understand what do we as a company do. So at the MedTech Connection, we partner with startups in their to accelerate their commercialization of pioneering innovation. We leverage our expertise and the knowledge we build up over the years and the network we have with professionals. And we also use our pre-sales teams and digital marketing initiatives. And this all we do in the end, which is our real core and my passion, is to bring the best MedTech innovation to patients now. So as you can see, we are not just a company sitting at a desk. No, we are in-field warriors. We want to be there in the field and utilize our network and also our digital prowess. So which means we work from online, we connect online with the healthcare professionals, and this is how we bring the technology to the patient. So our mission, as I said before, is to bring the best MedTech innovation to patients now. We do this by connecting the MedTech ecosystem. And I think this is a great example for us. It's really important for us to also be connected to investors and VC, like in this case, to the EIC, to Enric, which was for me, definitely a great and valuable connection to have. And we connect, of course, to healthcare professionals, hospitals and clinics every day in the field. We have developed a specific startup acceleration program, which consists of starting with the very early stage healthcare professional engagement, voice of customer, understanding what is their feedback to the product. Is it really an unmet need? Then a windows of opportunity scan, a sales pilot to kick off. I mean, researching the market is different than going and selling. Execution of the go-to-market, and finally support as well and connection, as we have the connection to the VC in driving for funding and growth. So we are a partner in pre-sales phase, strategic launch and pilot phase, execution of the go-to-market, scale up, funding, and even up to where you say, look, I need somebody to really lead the company in terms of sales. That's where we can also run the CSO coverage. So what are the next point in terms of what are the challenges in building execution of your business plan? And I've picked 3 important things to look at. First of all, when we look at what are the different technology segments. So, and these are segments which you have to understand, because I can imagine there are people who have maybe a technology which is more like a wearable being used outside of the hospital in the ambulatory space. So this is the segmentation for technology, which is really focused on hospital and clinic. So the first one, when you have only capital equipment, what are the challenges? Well, of course, as I said, significant sales funnel lead time. Then it's a high investment on tryouts. So if you want to move the technology in the beginning, bringing capital equipment, which mostly is heavy, big, etc., it takes time. Plus, sometimes the regulatory requirements take quite a lot of process and time in order to make sure that's being enabled. And so there's quite a high investment on that. Then, of course, your maintenance and technical support, you can capture that through building the right maintenance contracts with hospitals. But this is, your organization needs to be ready. And then the high investment barrier, of course, for the hospital in general for capital equipment. And that takes a lot of time that makes a bit of change in your sales funnels. It means that you need to, in the beginning, really be keen on that you get the buy-in from the financial department of the hospital, not only from the doctor. So check this. I mean, yesterday, for example, I was in a hospital and the first question I asked, do you think the hospital can fund for this? And maybe when you have a consumable, you won't ask this in the beginning because the doctor is not about monies. But in capital equipment, you need to go and check how would the hospital need to be able to justify such investment. Then you have, of course, a combination of a capital equipment and a consumable. So you can have, for example, a detector plus a probe, and there's some kind of implant, how you can detect the implant through the probe. So that's an example of this. And what is important there is how do you define your purchase model? So a loan versus a purchase of the capital equipment versus how do you put the product in the market? And this varies a lot by markets. A market like Germany would easily buy the capital equipment, whereas the markets in the south say, no, I buy your consumable, you put the capital equipment on loan. And so take into account the local variances on how hospitals tend to work in this case. And many times you have multiple clinical stakeholders, which makes things complicated to get everybody on board and aligned. So that's, for me, are the key challenges when it comes down to that type of technology. Then, of course, consumable or an implant. In general, more high price sensitive. A capital equipment, you can position your price and that's it. But a capital equipment, you have to be careful in your price positioning. Also because I believe there's a rather lower, copy barrier. You will get competition more fast. And the transfer barrier for the hospital to move to competition is lower. So in that case, you can make sure that they can capture it through a tender if the country is specific on tenders. And the last one, which definitely is hot, AI. Maybe a small comment. We've been working with AI since about 2 years. Over the last 2 years, we've seen resistance, not so much from the doctor side also, but we've also seen, of course, the complexity in the hospital not knowing how to deal with it. And so it's very hard to get the justification done and to get it implemented. Nevertheless, since ChatGPT, I believe that has been a big driver for also hospital have a much bigger acceptance on AI. And so I see big growth in this. And so, yeah, as I say here, the adoption to AI is complex. And at the moment, I believe we are in a big phase of transformation of full acceptance by the hospital, and it becomes very regular to get AI implemented. And of course, the fear by the healthcare professional that could be for the risk on his job or responsibility. Nevertheless, of course, AI only supports him and brings him great value, but that's something where the barrier you have to overcome and define your pricing model. Am I going to sell used by patient? Am I going to sell a monthly fee? How are you going to deal with that? That's quite complex and you need to look into this. Geographical focus challenge. So basically, where do you set the pin? Super important and defines a lot on your success in the end. And I've mentioned here 4 points which I want to address. First one, I believe very clearly in full focus on your home market. That's why you limit resources. Your travel time and takeaway is low, and you take away the cultural barriers. So your home country should be the one where you really focus on, no matter what size it is. Even if it's super small, even if it's Luxembourg, doesn't matter. That's where you learn. That's where you can get fastest information and connection to HCPs. Then your business model choice by market. We go from a market of an agency model. This is the model we induce. We go by fees, we go by commissions, and we give you direct access to the market. So, which means that this is a cost-effective solution, and you maintain business control. You know, and together as partners, we know where to go. I'm not saying that you have to choose this model for every market, but I believe this is a very solid model to start off, because you cannot afford it to have people everywhere and to be direct everywhere. But going direct through an agency is a great solution, and will give you a great benefit and be able to keep your business control on that. So that's an important one. Then third, research and use your network to scan the market and to find the right fit. So run a window of opportunity scan, understand the market, and see where your technology fits best. So when your technology, the market size, and potentially as well KOL support. If you've been engaging with several KOLs in several markets and you see there's a big support by one KOL, that could be a great incubator for this market to grow in the beginning. So that could be the right fit. So choose your market well. And finally, this is about market access. And in Europe, basically, there are some decentralized markets where the access to it is much easier. And those are Southern Europe and Germany, for example. There are more, of course, but as an example. And besides that, those cover 43% of the total EU population, more or less. So choose the markets where you have easy market access, because that will lower your sales funnel lead time. And in the end, of course, the target for success. Then I go to, now we're talking about sales funnel challenges. So as you can see here, this is as we define the sales funnel. Of course, there's little changes possible, but this is how we define it in general. So you have the market entry, where you do your regulatory assessment, your reimbursement assessment, and your first engagement to doctors. So which means like establishing a broad interest. Your medical marketing, make sure you have your product detailing on top, and secure consensus meetings. Then you get learn and evaluate, which means like tryouts, let them understand the IFU, and give trainings and workshops. Make sure that the tryout goes well. Then you have justify the proposal in the hospital towards the finance and accounting department to secure that they see the benefit. So have your economic proposal, your value story straight, and finally you get to close the contract, which means negotiation, tender, in the end, the implementation, training the team, and finally maintain and build. We believe that, especially the first part, as you can see here, digitalization, as well as the last part, that's where you can do a lot of things digital nowadays. Online engagement, social media, identification and approach online. And in that way, you're really much better prepared to have a pre-sales phase, to be able to already engage. You don't need everywhere immediately feet on the ground. You need partners in the end locally, but the first steps as a startup in your commercialization can be online and really identify those doctors. Now, what are the challenges for each step? That's what I want to highlight here. So these are the steps, and then you see below what are the challenges in each of the steps. The first steps is really to access those local HCPs, which you can do on one side yourself, but definitely having a local partner is very important, and we can support in that, is to find the right doctor and to get to them, to get their feedback and their insights. Get your reimbursement insights straight. Then the second step, once you are engaging with doctors, make sure that when several departments are involved, as soon as possible, make sure they align. They talk to each other and they have the same ideas around your technology. Then learn and evaluate, as I said before, your timelines to plan a tryout, and to really make sure that the tryout is effective as possible. Because I've been spending, to be honest, and in the beginning, months before a tryout was being done, and still this happens. And it's very complex. It even goes up to setting up a WhatsApp group with several doctors, making sure that they're all aligned, they're all in the same field. So WhatsApp, to me, is even helpful in that case. The tryout can take a lot of time, and you need to focus on that and use the right tactics and have people on the ground to really help you in that. Because if not, it will go south and take a lot of time. Justify the proposal. So one of the things could be lack of the value story. As I said before, really make sure you have this ready. And this is a long process because sometimes you don't have insights into who is dealing with it. The access to some people in the hospital is very limited. The doctor passes it on internally, but many times it might be you don't know where it is. You don't know where is your process. You don't know where it is in the approval. And so questioning the doctor, okay, who's involved, is very important here, because otherwise things get lost in space and you don't know where it is. Finally, close your contract. Yes, tenders can be cumbersome, can be time consuming. Nevertheless, it locks you in for a longer period of time against a fixed value. So that's very good. And finally, maintain and build. So that's when you get the customer in. Yes, I mean, the moment you sell, that's when things start, basically. That's when you need to start serve the customer, as well as see and explore more potential of him being engaged with you in building your clinical marketing. So that's where healthcare professional investments come in as well. So that's something you have to take into account, that it's not cheap. Once you've sold even, you need to start investing in terms of medical education, in terms of clinical data, etc., etc. So what are, for us, really the four important things to do, which can be your growth hack? What are your key imperatives to accelerate your first activation as part of your business planning? Regulatory and reimbursement mapping, that's a very important one and fundamental, especially in countries like Germany, for example, which is key, and I think you all know this, is key there. So that's where Windows of Opportunities can greatly help you to really get the insights of that market and how to get this done. Then your pre-sales and pre-marketing. So start in a very early stage, even though you don't have regulatory approval, but start the HCP engagement. That's where you win insights in order to make sure you have the right decision-making in your business planning. And the Windows of Opportunity scan in key markets. So make sure you understand all the insights about the market, the size, the number of procedures, what is the standard care at the moment, what do I bring, and what does it take to move towards your technology and build your value story. Those are for us really the four growth hacks you have to take to settle well in your planning to be successful later on, and to make sure that your forecasting is as accurate as possible. So to come to an end here, what are my take-home messages? Secure to check all boxes. Those are the ones I gave in the beginning. Don't count only on your innovation and that it will succeed anyway. No, be very critical and talk to doctors in the early stage to know what it is. Prepare, pre-sell, early stage, and engage with HCPs. And the lead time for a hospital can take between 6 months and 24 months. Really take that into account. Don't think that, oh, I start selling in March. Well, I think by summer I'll have my first sale done. No, don't think that. Think more end of the year. Windows of Opportunity scan is a key input for business planning, and identify your specific barriers and challenges in technology, geographical focus, and sales funnel. And that was for me the end here. I hope this was useful. Really feel free to reach out for any questions, doubts, whatever you want to comment, and I'm always pleased to connect. And definitely now fire away. It's time for the Q&A.
Thanks so much.